Hello, everyone. My name's Nissa, owner of Magic of Paws, here to help you help your pets. I am so sorry I missed out on our scheduled live on Monday. I was at urgent care getting my finger looked at, um, and it was a little hard to go live from the waiting room. Sorry, guys. So as opposed to canceling this past Monday's live, I pushed it to the end of August at the end of all the lives that I already had scheduled. So hopefully we'll be able to dive right in and not miss too many beats. So if you're watching today, please go ahead and tell me in the comments, what do you have for pets? I am curious. And if you're watching the replay, please put the hashtag replay so that I can know that you watched it on the second time around. While it's always best to join live, I do appreciate you joining and watching later on. And I do keep an eye on those comments. So if any point when I ask for questions, if you're watching on the replay, do not hesitate to put those down in the comments and we'll get those answered for you. Just not instantly on the live. All right, so today's topic is we are going to be talking about the history of anxiety in dogs and how it's changed, how we've looked at things over the centuries has evolved, because there's been a lot of change in not just dog training and canine cognition, but specifically on this issue. So I want to make sure that we look at what we did in the past so that we can look and see what we've changed for the future. So as you know, the bond between humans and dogs goes back thousands of years. And understanding this bond is really important to understand how our dog's behavior has evolved in that time as well. If you are interested in that subject, Dr. Wynn has a fantastic book on the subject, Dog is Love. It is very well written. It's very accessible, but there's still lots of great science in there. Everything from when dogs became domesticated down to how our connections with dogs impacts dogs in a shelter setting. So if you're interested, this is a very good book. Anyway, we're not going to go into the general overall history of the human canine bond because can't tell, it's a bit of a book. I actually have finished it. This was me starting to reread. So, but yeah, we don't have time for that. So instead, we're going to focus specifically on anxiety, what it looks like, how it's developed and changed over the years, and what our current outlook is for that. So first, let's get into the prevalence of anxiety. Studies are varied on this. I've seen numbers from as low as 12% up to as high as 70%. It really depends on the size of the pool and what we're drawing the pool from. Are we getting information from professionals or self-reported from owners? But in general, a good number is somewhere around 30%. That 30% of dogs exhibit signs of anxiety-related behaviors, such as barking, trembling, destructiveness, and avoidance. When you get the higher end numbers is when you start looking into things like pacing, an inability to settle, and more subtle signs of anxiety. But this statistic, whether we look at 12, 30, or 70%, highlights a really important need for a really comprehensive understanding of the factors that really contribute to anxiety in dogs and how we can develop those strategies to alleviate their discomfort and distress. So I know it seems a little weird to just toss out a number, but it's really important to realize that if you know 10 dogs, at least 3 of them have some form of canine anxiety, which is pretty significant. Our numbers are a little bit more skewed to the 70% because of how we cater to our clients and the clients that we actively look for. But it does not mean that dogs in an overall family, your general outlook on dogs, regardless of what your background is, you know at least one anxious dog, most likely many more than that. Anyway, that was rambling. I'm distracted again. I tried to count with my finger and it hurt. It threw me off. All right. So we've talked about the prevalence. Let's talk about some early theories of what anxiety looked like in dogs. So throughout history, people have observed these anxious behaviors in dogs and attempted to explain them in different ways. And that observation and explanation has changed drastically over the centuries. So way back when, it was attributed to a dog's inherent temperament and a perceived lack of discipline. So misunderstandings in this have led to punitive training methods being used to suppress that anxiety, and which often resulted in worse outcomes for the dogs. But these early beliefs that it is a lack of discipline, a lack of training, really underscores the importance of a more informed and compassionate approach that addresses canine anxiety. So over the years, our understanding of anxiety in dogs has changed. It's gone from being just a series of behaviors that are observed outside of a context, which is the more behavioral lens to look at things. And the science is actually supporting more of the understanding similar to people, where it's a complex emotional state that's influenced by genetics, environmental factors, and individual experiences. So that has totally reshaped our understanding of anxiety of dogs, how we address the issue, and how we research it. Modern research emphasizes the role of things like neurology, cognition, and social factors in the development and the manifestation of anxiety in dogs. It is a much bigger holistic picture than just simply a series of behaviors that a dog partakes in. There's a lot going on. So one of the things that you've heard me mention is genetics and a predisposition in some dogs for anxiety. Unfortunately, selective breeding, which has been taking place for centuries, has generally produced some awesome dogs, some amazing breeds that we absolutely love and adore. But in some cases, this has inadvertently contributed to some anxiety-related behaviors in certain dog breeds. So breeding for certain physical characteristics or behaviors without considering the whole impact on mental well-being has led to an increased susceptibility and anxiety disorders in certain breeds. And this isn't because they were bad breeders, it isn't because they didn't care, but as we've already talked about, the understanding of anxiety has changed. It used to be thought of as like an individual problem, that if a dog is anxious, it's because it hasn't been trained properly, it wasn't disciplined properly, and it had no downstream consequence. Now that we understand that anxiety is a whole big spectrum of behaviors that are related to the brain and neurochemicals and like socialization, development, as well as genetics, we're seeing a lot of these downstream consequences in certain breeds. So recognizing that this is something that can be passed down hereditarily is really important when looking for dogs to bring into your home. Any good breeder will let you meet the parents and answer any questions they have about those parents. And ideally, if a dog is displaying signs of anxiety, they shouldn't be being bred because there is that chance of them passing it down. Granted, I'm one of those people who adopts all of my dogs. I have no idea what my dog's parents looked like, what they were, if they were anxious or not. So it's not as crucial of a thing for me to look into. But if you are looking into purchasing a dog from a breeder, make sure that you're asking those temperament questions, because if you're a dog's mother, especially, is more on the anxious side, the chances are that your puppy that you'd be getting from them would be more anxious than not. Some of those traits that we have been breeding for over the centuries that have led to anxiety served really important purposes in the past. And this is where we really need to look into how we've changed as a society and how society has evolved. So, how our living conditions have changed and how the lifestyles of dogs have changed. So, moving into cities, different changes in family structure, and increased exposure to novel stimuli, things that are unusual that they don't see every day, can really impact a dog's level of anxiety. So, a dog, like, I'll pick on Boomer. Boomer is 50% border collie. Border collies are bred to run all day and herd sheep and be super smart, be able to think for themselves and all of that. And if you take all of those traits and put them into a dog that lives in an apartment, you're setting them up for anxiety. They don't have an outlet for all of that physical or mental energy. So you need to make sure that that's all being taken into account. So that's where the genetics and the changes in society have kind of come to a head. Or dogs that are bred to work are now being put into families and not necessarily working. So they don't have that same outlet that they would normally have to keep their anxiety in check. Other things to bear in mind is that even 50 years ago, dogs were living much less hectic lives. They were living in smaller cities, less urbanization. The chances of them being exposed to a new thing every day were significantly lower than they are today. Just walking out on the street, your dog can be exposed to a whole bunch of novel things that they might never have been exposed to if he walked on that same street 50 years ago. So that is all playing a part as well. And it really is a unique challenge faced by dogs in those different environments. So, with the changing in understanding, the changing in society, and the changing in breeding practices comes a change in the research, which is super amazing from my point of view. As someone who has a background in research science, specifically genetics, the direction that research is taking into canine anxiety is mind blowing and amazing. And I am here for every new discovery. These developments in research and understanding of canine cognition and neurobiology have all played a role in advancing our knowledge of canine anxiety. So the research tends to look more at the physiological and behavioral aspects of anxiety, including and using that to identify things like biomarkers, genetic disorders, genetic factors, and different neural pathways associated with anxiety disorders. And this research is being done in humans as well, and they're working together to give us a better understanding of what causes anxiety in both humans and dogs. Dogs are actually being used as a research model for human anxiety because of how similar our neural networks can be when it comes to anxiety. So with all of this research that's being done, we're being able to look at more targeted treatments and interventions. We learn new things every day as dog trainers and behavior consultants that allow us to tweak a dog's behavior that we didn't have even just when I started just 10 years ago. It's really amazing how much our toolbox has grown over the past, even just the years that I've been actively training. This is one I really wanted to take a point to look at how things used to be done and to look forward into how things are currently being done and being done in the future. This is really important because a lot of people are still stuck in the historical understanding of canine behavior and cognition, as well as how they interpret emotions and all of that. And it's not because people are ignorant or slow or whatever. It's honestly that the research has moved so fast that if you're not keeping up with it, you get left behind like that. So historically, a lot of managing canine anxiety has boiled down to corrective training techniques and adversive methods, things like flooding, using shock collars, prong collars, overwhelming a dog to basically suppress that behavior until you get a dog that looks like it doesn't have anxiety. These often worked in the short term, but didn't address any long term issues and didn't address the underlying emotional distress that a dog was going through. So while it may have worked in the short term, it often exacerbated the problems in the long run, leading to dogs with more chronic anxiety than we would have had if we had never used any of these more adversive corrective techniques. So the modern approaches are varied. And like I've mentioned a million times already in this live, they are constantly changing for the better, in my opinion. So we are able to, because of all of this new research, we're able to look at more humane and effective approaches to dealing with anxiety in dogs. So things like positive reinforcement training, behavior modification, environmental enrichment, and even pharmacological interventions, things like Prozac uh, and uh, trazodone are pretty common, gabapentin as well. Those are now being recognized as valuable tools in managing a dog's anxiety, not just suppressing this behavior until it goes away. So it allows us to focus on building a dog's emotional resilience, making them stronger and better able to handle anxious situations in the future, and provides them with great coping mechanisms for anything that might upset them. So it's really important. This is where I live, this end of the spectrum. I focus a lot on, my background is all positive reinforcement training. That's what I have focused on for years. And I'm starting now to integrate a lot more of setting up good environments, providing enrichment, and supporting the whole dog, not just the behavior portion of the dog, because you can't really do one without the other. A dog can only perform at its best if they feel their best. And if they cannot learn the coping skills that they need, then they might not be able to learn and evolve going forward. So you want to make sure that you're supporting them where they're at so that they can grow and improve. Now, I've just talked for 18 minutes and covered centuries of dog cognition and research and training. So I fully understand if you have questions. So please put them in the comments. I will answer them when I see them. But most importantly, if you are struggling with an anxious dog, I want to make sure that you know that there is help out there for you. And if you are local to me, I really, really would encourage you to reach out and see if we can help in any way. There is address down below for our new in-home coaching program that we have. I'll drop it in the comments as well. So we have not launched this program yet. It's something we're still in the process of building. But if you're curious, you want to learn more, please go ahead and drop your email address on that website to get more information when we are ready to go live for it. We would love to have you as a part of the team. But this is going to be, if you're local to me, a really great way to get that support. Obviously, you can just go to our website at anytimemagicofpaws.com to learn more about all of our services. Just know that we are currently closed to new clients. So if you want to get started on working with us, please make sure that you sign up on that wait list, or you sign up for one of our group training classes, which is currently the only place we are taking in brand new clients. So sorry, we're just too busy. But I did want to make sure that I was still available to help those dogs that need my help the most, which is why I've created this new program. So if you have any questions, drop them down in the comments. There's nobody live with me right now, which is fine. It's 4:21 on a Wednesday. I wasn't expecting a ton of people to be live, but I had to go live now because this is when I have the most energy. So I will be back on your screens on Friday at 4 o'clock, same time, same place. This Friday, we are going to be discussing the most frequently asked questions that I get when it comes to canine anxiety and why their dogs act certain ways. Obviously, if my top 5 questions are not questions that you have, please join us live and we will answer them on the stream. Anyway, have a good rest of your day, and I will see you all on Friday. Give your dogs a pet for me.